Hello, I'm so happy to present to you today, for Halloween month, Warm Bodies by Marion. This is a story that I wanted to pick up because it's a zombie story. It's also a love story based on Romeo and Juliet. And the main character, this was turned to a movie. The main character, that's a girl, is Teresa Palmer, and I just finished watching the entire series of, I think it was called All These Witches, and that was also based on a book. Um, and yeah, so here we go. I am dead, but it's not so bad. I've learned to live with it. I'm sorry, I can't properly introduce myself, but I don't have a name anymore. Hardly any of us do. We lose them like car keys, forget them like anniversaries. Mine might have started with an R, but that's all I have now. It's funny because back when I was alive, I was always forgetting other people's names. My friend M says the irony of being a zombie is that everything is funny, but you can't smile because your lips have rotted off. None of us are particularly attractive, but death has been kinder to me than some. I'm still in the early stages of decay. Just the gray skin, the unpleasant smell, the dark circles under my eyes. I could almost pass for a living man in need of a vacation. Before I became a zombie, I must have been a businessman, a banker, or a broker, or some young temp learning the ropes, because I'm wearing fairly nice clothes. Black slacks, gray shirt, red tie, and makes fun of me sometimes. He points at my tie and tries to laugh, a choked, gurgly rumble deep in his gut. His clothes are holey jeans and a plain white t-shirt. The shirt is looking pretty macabre by now. He should have picked a darker color. We like to joke and speculate about our clothes, since these final fashion choices are the only indication of who we were before we became no one. Some are less obvious than mine. Shorts and a sweater, skirt and a blouse. So we make random guesses. You were a waitress. You were a student. Ring any bells? It never does. No one I know has any specific memories, just a vague vestigial knowledge of a world long gone, faint impressions of past lives that linger like phantom limbs. We recognize civilization, building cars, a general overview, but we have no personal role in it, no history. We are just here. We do what we do. Some time passes and no one asks questions. But like I've said, it's not so bad. We may appear mindless, but we aren't. The rusty cogs of cognicy still spin, just geared down and down until the outer motion is barely visible. We grunt and groan, we shrug and nod, and sometimes a few words slip out. It's not that different from before. But it does make me sad that we've forgotten our names. Out of everything, this seems to me the most tragic. I miss my own, and I mourn for everyone else's, because I'd like to love them, but I don't know who they are. There are hundreds of us living in an abandoned airport outside some large city. We don't need shelter or warmth, obviously, but we like having the walls and roof over our heads. Otherwise, we'd just be wandering in an open field of dust somewhere, and that would be horrifying. To have nothing at all around us, nothing to touch or look at, no hard lines whatsoever, just us and the gaping maw of the sky. I imagine that's what being full dead is like. An emptiness vast and absolute. I think we've been here a long time. I still have all my flesh, But there are elders who are little more than skeletons with clinging bits of muscle, dry as jerky. Somehow it still extends and contracts, and they keep moving. I have never seen any of us, quote, die of old age. Left alone with plenty of food, maybe we'd, quote, live forever. I don't know. The future is as blurry to me as the past. I can't seem to make myself care about anything to the right or left of the present. And the present isn't exactly urgent. You might say, death has relaxed me. I am riding the escalators when M finds me. I ride the escalators several times a day, whenever they move. It's become a ritual. The airport is derelict, but the power still flickers on sometimes, maybe flowing from emergency generators, stuttering deep underground. Lights flash and screens blink, machines jolt into motion. I cherish these moments, the feeling of things coming to life. I stand on the steps and I ascend like a soul into heaven, that sugary dream of our childhoods, now a tasteless joke. Maybe after 30 repetitions, I rise to find M waiting for me at the top. He is hundreds of pounds of muscle and fat draped on a 6'5" frame. Bearded, bald, bruised, and rotten, his grisly visage slides into view as I crest the staircase summit. Is he the angel that greets me at this gate? His ragged mouth is oozing black drool. He points in a vague direction and grunts, "City." And I nod and follow him. We are going out to find food. A hunting party forms around us as we shuffle toward town. It's not hard to find recruits for these expeditions, even if no one is hungry. Focused thought is a rare occurrence here, and we all follow it when it manifests. Otherwise, we'd just be standing around and groaning all day. We do a lot of standing around and groaning. Years pass this way. The flesh withers on our bones, and we stand here, waiting for it to go. I often wonder how old I am. The city where we do our hunting is conveniently close. We arrive around noon the next day and start looking for flesh. The new hunger is a strange feeling. We don't feel it in our stomachs. Some of us don't even have those. We feel it everywhere equally. A sinking, sagging sensation, as if our cells are deflating. Last winter, when so many living joined the dead and our prey became scarce, I watched some of my friends become full dead. The transition was undramatic. They just slowed down, then stopped, and after a while I realized that they were corpses. It disquieted me at first, but it's against etiquette to notice when one of us dies. I distracted myself with some groaning. I think the world has mostly ended, because the cities we wander through are as rotten as we are. Buildings have collapsed, rusted cars clog the streets. Most glass is shattered, and the wind drifting through the hollow high-rises moans like an animal left to die. I don't know what happened. Disease, war, social collapse? Or was it just us, the dead replacing the living? I guess it's not so important. Once you've arrived at the end of the world, it hardly matters which route you took. We start to smell the living as we approach a dilapidated apartment building. The smell is not the musk of sweat and skin. It's the effervescence of life energy, like ionized tang of lightning and lavender. We don't smell it in our noses. It hits us deeper inside, near our brains like wasabi. We converge on the building and crash our way inside. We find them huddled in a small studio unit with the windows boarded up. They are dressed worse than we are, wrapped in filthy tatters and rags, all of them in badly need of a shave. M will be saddled with a short blonde beard for the rest of his fleshy existence. But everyone else in our party is clean-shaven. It's one of the perks of being dead. Another thing that we don't have to worry about anymore. Beards, hair, toenails. No more fighting biology. Our wild bodies have finally been tamed. Slow and clumsy, but with unswerving commitment, we launch ourselves at the living. Shotgun blasts fill the dusty air with gunpowder and gore. Black blood spatters the wall. The loss of an arm, a leg, a portion of torso. This is disregarded and shrugged off, a minor cosmetic issue. But some of us take shots to our brains, and we drop. Apparently, there's still something of value in that withered gray sponge, because if we lose it, we are corpses. The zombies to my left and right hit the ground with moist thuds. But there are plenty of us. We are overwhelming. We set upon the living, and we eat. Eating is not a pleasant business. I chew off a man's arm, and I hate it. I hate his screams because I don't like pain. I don't like hurting people. But this is the world now. This is what we do. Of course, if I don't eat all of him, if I spare his brain, he'll rise up and follow me back to the airport, and that might make me feel better. I'll introduce him to everyone, and maybe we'll stand around and groan for a while. It's hard to say what, quote, friends are anymore, but that might be close. If I restrain myself, if I leave enough, but I don't. I can't. As always, I go straight for the good part, the part that makes my head light up like a picture tube. I eat the brain, and for about 30 seconds, I have memories. Flashes of parades, perfume, music, life. And then it fades, and I get up, and we all stumble out of the city, still cold and gray, but feeling a little better. Not good exactly, not happy, certainly not alive, but a little less dead. This is the best we can do. I trail behind the group as the city disappears behind us. My steps plod a little heavier than the others. When I pause at a rain-filled pothole to scrub gore off my face and clothes, M drops back and slaps a hand on my shoulder. He knows my distaste for some of our routines. He knows I'm a little more sensitive than most. Sometimes he teases me, twirls my messy black hair into pigtails, and then says, "Girl, such girl." But he knows when to take my gloom seriously. He pats my shoulder and just looks at me. His face isn't capable of much expressive nuance anymore, but I know what he wants to say. I nod, and we keep on walking. I don't know why we have to kill people. I don't know what chewing through a man's neck accomplishes. I steal what he has to replace what I lack. He disappears, and I stay. It's simple but senseless, arbitrary laws from some lunatic legislator in the sky. But following those laws keeps me walking, so I follow them to the letter. I eat until I stop eating, and then I eat again. How did this start? How did we become what we are? Was it some mysterious virus, gamma rays, an ancient curse, or something even more absurd? No one talks about it much. We are here, and this is the way it is. We don't complain. We don't ask questions. We just go about our business. There's a chasm between me and the world outside of me. a gap so wide my feelings can't cross. By the time my screams reach the other side, they have dwindled into groans. At the arrivals gate, we are greeted by a small crowd, watching with hungry eyes or eye sockets. We drop our cargo on the floor. Two mostly intact men, a few meaty legs, and a dismembered torso are still warm. We call it leftovers. We call it takeout. Our fellow dead fall on them and feast right there on the floor like animals. The life remaining in those cells will keep them from full dying, but the dead who don't hunt will never quite be satisfied. Like men at sea deprived of fresh fruit, they will wither in their deficiencies, weak and perpetually empty, because the new hunger is a lonely monster. It grudgingly accepts the brown meat and the lukewarm blood, but what it craves is closeness, the grim sense of the connection that courses between their eyes and ours in those final moments, like some dark negative of love. I wave to M, and then break free from the crowd. I have long since acclimated to the dead's perverse stench, but the reek rising off them today feels especially fetid. Breathing is optional, but I need some air. I wander out onto the connecting hallways and ride the conveyors. I stand on the belt and I watch the scenery scroll by the window wall. Not much to see. The runways are turning green, overrun with grass and brush. Jets lie motionless on the concrete like beach whales, white and monumental. Moby Dick, conquered at last. Before, when I was alive, I could never have done this. Standing still, watching the world pass me by, thinking about nearly nothing. I remember effort. I remember targets and deadlines, goals and ambitions. I remember being purposeful, always everywhere all the time. Now I'm just standing here on the conveyor, along for the ride. I reach the end, turn around, and go back the other way. The world has been distilled. Being dead is easy. After a few hours of this, I notice a female on the opposite conveyor. She doesn't lurch or groan like most of us. Her head just lolls from side to side. I like that about her, that she doesn't lurch or groan. I catch her eye and stare at her as we approach. For a brief moment, we are side by side, only a few feet away. We pass, then travel on opposite ends of the hall. We turn around and look at each other. We get back on the conveyors. We pass each other again. I grimace, and she grimaces back. On our third pass, the airport power dies, and we come to a halt perfectly aligned. I wheeze hello, and she responds with a hunch of her shoulder. I like her. I reach out and I touch her hair. Like me, her decomposition is at an early stage. Her skin is pale and her eyes are sunken, but she has no exposed bones or organs. Her irises are an especially light shade of that strange pewter gray that all dead share. Her grave clothes are a black skirt and snug white button-up. I suspect she used to be a receptionist. Pinned to her chest is a silver name tag. She has a name. I stare hard at the tag. I lean in close, putting my face just inches from her breasts, but it doesn't help. The letters spin and reverse in my vision. I can't hold them down. As always, they elude me, just a series of meaningless lines and blots. Another of M's undead ironies, from name tags to newspapers, the answers to our questions are written all around us, and we don't know how to read. I point at the tag and look in her eyes. Your name? She looks at me blankly. I point at myself and I pronounce the remaining fragment of my own name. And then I point at her again. Her eyes drop to the floor. She shakes her head. She doesn't remember. She doesn't even have one syllable, like Em and I do. She is no one. But don't I always expect too much? I reach out and take her hand. We walk off the conveyors with our arms stretched across the divider. This female and I, we've fallen in love, or what's left of it. I think I remember what love was like before. There were complex emotional and biological factors. We had elaborate tests to pass and connections to forge, up and downs and tears and whirlwinds. It was an ordeal, an exercise in agony, but it was alive. And the new love is simpler, easier, but small. My girlfriend doesn't talk much. We walk through the echoing corridors of the airport, occasionally passing someone staring out a window or at a wall. I try to think of things to say, but nothing comes. And if something did come, I probably couldn't say it. This is my great obstacle, the biggest of all the boulders littering my path. In my mind, I am eloquent. I can climb intricate scaffolds of words to reach the highest cathedral ceilings and paint my thoughts. But when I open my mouth, it all collapses. So far, my personal record is 4 rolling syllables before some thing jams, and I may be the most loquacious zombie in this airport. I don't know why we don't speak. I can't explain the suffocating silence that hangs over our world, cutting us off from each other like prison visit plexiglass. Prepositions are painful. Articles are arduous. Adjectives are wild overachievements. Is this muteness a real physical handicap, or one of the many symptoms of being dead? Or do we have nothing left to say? I attempt conversation with my girlfriend, testing out a few awkward phrases and shallow questions, trying to get a reaction out of her, any twitch of wit. But she just looks at me like I'm weird. We wander for a few hours, directionless. Then she grips my hand and starts leading me somewhere. We stumble our way down the halted escalators and out onto the tarmac. I sigh wearily. She's taking me to church. The dead have built a sanctuary on the runway. At some point in the distant past, someone pushed all the stair trucks together into a circle, forming a kind of amphitheater. We gather here. We stand here. We lift our arms and moan. The ancient bonies wave their skeletal arms in the center circle, rasping out dry, wordless sermons through toothy grins. I don't understand what this is. I don't think any of us do. But it's the only time we willingly gather under the open sky. That vast cosmic mouth, distant mountains like teeth in the skull of God, yawning wide to devour us, to swallow us down to where we probably belong. My girlfriend appears to be more devout than I am. She closes her eyes and waves her arms in a way that looks almost heartfelt. I stand next to her and I hold my own hands in the air stiffly. At some unknown cue, maybe drawn by her fervor, the bonies stop their preaching and stare at us. One of them comes forward, climbs our stairs, and takes us both by the wrists. It leads us down into the circle and raises our hands in clawed grip. It lets out a kind of roar, an unearthly sound like a blast of air through a broken hunting horn, shockingly loud, frightening the birds out of the trees. The congregation murmurs in response, and it's done. We are married. We step back onto the stair seats. The service resumes. My new wife closes her eyes and waves her arms. The day after our wedding, we have children. A small group of bonies stop us in the hall and present them to us, a boy and a girl, both around 6 years old. The boy is curly blonde, with gray skin and gray eyes, perhaps once Caucasian. The girl is darker, with black hair and ashy brown skin, deeply shadowed around her steely eyes. She might have been Arab. The bonies nudge them forward, and they give us tentative smiles, and they hug our legs. I pat them on their heads and I ask their names, but they don't have any. I sigh, and my wife and I keep walking, hand in hand with our new children. I wasn't exactly expecting this. This is a big responsibility. The young dead don't have the natural feeding instincts that adults do. They have to be tended and trained, and they will never grow up. Stunted by our curse, they will stay small and rot, and then become little skeletons, animate but empty, their brains rattling stiff in their skulls, repeating their routines and their rituals until one day, I can only assume, the bones themselves will disintegrate and they'll be just gone. Look at them. Watch them as my wife and I release their hands and they wander outside to play. They tease each other and grin. They play with things that aren't even toys, staplers and mugs and calculators. They giggle and laugh, though it does sound choked through their dry throats. We've bleached their brains, robbed them of breath, but they still cling to the cliff's edge. They resist our curse for as long as they possibly can. I watch them disappear into the pale daylight at the end of the hall. Deep inside me, in some dark and cobwebbed chamber, I feel something twitch. I have one more chapter to read because it introduces our second main character. It's time to feed again. I don't know how long it's been since our last hunting trip, probably just a few days, but I feel it. I feel the electricity in my limbs fizzling and fading. I see relentless visions of blood in my mind, that brilliant, mesmerizing red, flowing through bright pink tissues in intricate webs and Pollock fractals, pulsing and vibrating with life. I find M in the food court talking to some girls. He is a little different than me. He does seem to enjoy the company of women, and his better-than-average diction draws them in like dazzling carp. But he keeps a distance. He laughs them off. The Bonies once tried to set him up with a wife, but he simply walked away. Sometimes I wonder if he has a philosophy, maybe even a world view. I'd like to sit down with him and pick his brain, just a tiny bite somewhere in the frontal lobe, to get a taste of his thoughts. But he's too much of a tough guy to ever be that vulnerable. City, I say, putting a hand on my stomach. Food. The girls he's talking to look at me and shuffle away. I've noticed I make some people nervous, though I can't guess why. Just ate, M says, frowning at me a bit. 2 days ago. I grab my stomach again. Feel empty. Feel dead. He nods. Marriage. I glare at him. I shake my head and clutch my stomach harder. Need. Go. Get others. He sighs and walks out, bumping into me hard on his way past. But I'm not sure if it was intentional. He is, after all, a zombie. He manages to find a few others with appetites, and we form a small posse. Very small. Unsafely small. But I don't care. I don't recall ever being this hungry. As we set out toward the city, we take the freeway. Like everything else, the roads are returning to nature. We wander down the empty lanes and the under-ivy curtained overpasses. My residual memories of these roads contrast dramatically with their peaceful present state. I take a deep breath of the sweet, silent air. We push deeper into the city than usual. The only scents that I pick up are rust and dust. The unsheltered living are getting scarcer, and the ones with shelter are venturing out less frequently. I suspect their stadium fortresses are becoming self-sufficient. I imagine vast gardens planted in the dugouts, bursting with carrots and beans, cattle in the press box, rice paddies in the outfield. We can see the largest of these citadels looming in the hazy horizon, its retractable roof wide open to the sun, taunting us. But finally, we sense prey. The life scent electrifies our nostrils, bright and strong. They are close, and there are a lot of them, maybe half our own number. We hesitate, stumbling to a halt. Am looks at me. He looks at our small group and then back at me. No, he grunts. I point to the crooked, collapsed skyscraper that's emitting the aroma, a cartoon trendle of scent beckoning us to come hither. Eat, I insist. M shakes his head. Too many. Eat. He looks at our group again. He sniffs the air. The rest of them are undecided. Some of them also sniff warily, but others are more single-minded like me. They groan and drool and they snap their teeth. I'm getting agitated. Need it! I shout, glaring at M. Come on! I turn and start speed lumbering toward the skyscraper. Focused thought. The rest of the group reflexively follows. M catches up and walks beside me, watching me with an uneasy grimace. Spurred to an unusual level of intensity by my desperate energy, our group crashes through the revolving doors and rushes down the dark hallways. Some earthquake or explosion has knocked out part of the foundation, and the entire high-rise leans at a dizzying funhouse angle. It's hard to navigate. The zigzagging halls and the inclines make it a challenge to even walk, but the scent is overpowering. After a few flights of stairs, I start to hear them as well, clattering around, talking to each other in those steady, melodious streams of words. Living speech has always been a sonic pheromone to me, and I spasm briefly when it hits my ears. I've yet to meet another zombie who shares my appreciation for those silky rhythms. M thinks it's a sick fetish. As we approach their level of the building, some of us start to groan loudly, and the living hear us. One of them shouts the alarm, and I hear guns cocking, but we don't hesitate. We burst through a final door and rush them. M grunts when he sees how many there are, but he lunges with me at the nearest man and grabs his arms while I rip out his throat. The burning red taste of blood floods my mouth. The sparkle of life sprays out of his cells like citrus mist from an orange peel, and I suck it in. The darkness of the room is pulsing with gunfire, and by our standards, we're grossly outnumbered. There are only 3 of us to every one of them. But something is tipping things in our favor. Our manic speed is uncharacteristic of the dead, and our prey are not prepared for it. Is this all coming from me? Creatures without desire don't usually move quickly, but they're following my lead, and I am an angry whirlwind. What has come over me? Am I just having a bad day? There is one other factor working to our advantage. These living are not seasoned veterans. They are young, teenagers mostly, boys and girls. One of them has such gruesome acne, he's likely to get shot by mistake in this flickering light. Their leader is a slightly older kid with a patchy beard, standing on a cubicle desk in the middle of the room and shouting panicked commands to his men. As they fall to the floor under the weight of our hunger, as dots of blood pointilize the walls, this boy leans protectively over a small figure, crouched below him on a desk. A girl, young and blonde, bracing her bird-boned shoulder against her shotgun as she fires blindly into the dark. I lope across the room and grab the boy's boots. I pull his feet out from under him and he falls, cracking his head on the edge of the desk. Without hesitation, I pounce on him and bite through his neck. Then I dig my fingers into the crack in his skull and I pry his head open like an eggshell. His brain pulses hot and pink inside. I take a deep, wide, ravenous bite, and I'm Perry Kelvin, a 9-year-old boy growing up in rural nowhere. The threats are all on some distant coast, and we don't worry about them here. Other than the emergency chain link fence between the river and the mountain ridge, life is almost normal. I'm in school. I'm learning about George Washington. I'm riding my bike down dusty roads in shorts and a tank top, feeling the summer sun broil the back of my neck. My neck hurts. I'm eating a slice of pizza with my mom and dad. It's my birthday, and they're doing what they can to treat me, though their money isn't worth much anymore. I've just turned 11, and they're finally taking me to see one of the countless zombie movies cropping up lately. I'm so excited I can barely taste my pizza. I take an oversized bite, and the thick cheese sticks in my throat. I choke it back up, and my parents laugh. Tomato sauce stains my shirt like I am 15. Gazing out the window at looming walls of my new home. Clouded gray sunlight drifts down through the stadium's open roof. I'm at school again, listening to a lecture about salvage safety and trying not to stare at the beautiful girl sitting next to me. She has short, choppy blonde hair and blue eyes that dance with private amusement. My palms are sweating. My mouth is full of laundry lint. When the class ends, I catch her in the hall and I say, "Hi." "Hi," she says. "I'm new here." "I know." "My name is Perry." She smiles. "I'm Julie." She smiles. Her eyes glitter. "I'm Julie." She smiles. I glimpse her braces. Her eyes are classic novels and poetry. "I'm Julie," she says. She says, "Perry." Julie whispers in my ear as I kiss her neck. She twines her fingers into mine and she squeezes hard. I kiss her deep and I caress the back of her head with my free hand, tangling my fingers in her hair. I look into her eyes. "Do you want to?" I breathe. She smiles. She closes her eyes and she says, "Yes." I crush her against me. I want to be part of her, not just inside her, but all around her. I want our rib cages to crack open and our hearts to migrate and merge. I want our cells to braid together like living thread. And now I'm older, wiser, gunning a motorcycle down a forgotten downtown boulevard. Julie's on the seat behind me, her arms clutching my chest, her legs wrapped around mine. Her aviators glint in the sun as she grins, showing her perfectly straight teeth. The grin is not mine to share anymore, and I know this. I've accepted the way things are and the way things are going to be, even if she hasn't and won't. But at least I can protect her. At least I can keep her safe. She's so unbearably beautiful, and sometimes I see a future with her in my head. But my head? My head? My head hurts. Oh God, my head is... Stop. Who are you? Let the memories dissolve. Your eyes are crusted. You blink them, gasp in a ragged breath. You're you again. You're no one. Welcome back. I feel the carpet under my fingers. I hear the gunshots. I stand up and I look around, dizzy and reeling. I have never had a vision so deep, like an entire life spooling through my head. The sting of tears burns in my eyes, but my ducts no longer have fluid. The feeling rages, unquenched like pepper spray. It's the first time I've felt pain since I've died. I hear a scream nearby and I turn. It's her. She is here. Julie is here. Older now, maybe 19. Her baby fat melted away, revealing sharper lines and finer poise, muscles small but toned on her girlish frame. She's huddled in a corner, unarmed, sobbing and screaming as M creeps toward her. He always finds the women. Their memories are porn to him. I still feel disoriented, unsure where or who I am, but I shove M aside and snarl, "No, mine." He grits his teeth like he's about to turn on me, but a gunshot tears into his shoulder, and he shuffles across the room to help two other zombies bring down a kid with an Uzi. I approach the girl. She cowers before me, her tender flesh offering me all the things I'm accustomed to taking, and my instincts start to reassert themselves. The urge to rip and tear surges into my arms and jaw, but then she screams again, and something inside me moves, a feeble moth struggling against a web. In this brief moment of hesitation, still warm with the nectar of a young man's memories, I make a choice. I let out a gentle groan and inch toward the girl, trying to force kindness into my dull expression. I am not no one. I am a 9-year-old boy. I'm a 15-year-old boy. She throws a knife at my head. The blade sticks straight into the center of my forehead and quivers there, but it has penetrated less than an inch, only grazing my frontal lobe. I pull it out and drop it. I hold out my hands, making soft noises through my lips, but I'm helpless. How do I appear unthreatening when her lover's blood is running down my chin? I'm just a few feet away from her now. She's fumbling through her jeans for another weapon. Behind me, the dead are finishing their butchery. Soon they will turn their attention to this dim corner of the room. I take a deep breath. Julie, I say. It rolls off my tongue like honey. I feel good just saying it. Her eyes go wide. She freezes. Julie, I say again. I put out my hands. I point at the zombies behind me. I shake my head. She stares at me, making no sign that she understands. But when I reach out to touch her, she doesn't move, and she doesn't stab me. I reach my free hand into the head wound of a fallen zombie and collect a palmful of black, lifeless blood. Slowly, with gentle movements, I smear it on her face, down her neck, and onto her clothes. She doesn't even flinch. She's probably catatonic. I take her hand and I pull her to her feet. At that moment, Em and the others finish devouring their prey, and they turn to inspect the room. Their eyes fall on me. They fall on Julie. I walk toward them, gripping Julie's hand, but not quite dragging her. She staggers behind me, staring straight ahead. Em sniffs the air cautiously, but I know he's smelling exactly what I'm smelling. Nothing. Just the negative smell of dead blood. It's splattered over all the walls, soaked into our clothes, and smeared carefully on a young living girl, concealing the glow of her life under its dark, overpowering musk. Without a word, we leave the high-rise and head back to the airport. I walk in a daze, full of strange and kaleidoscopic thoughts. Julie holds limply to my hand, staring at the side of my face with wide eyes and trembling lips. So that's the beginning of their meet cute in two meanings of the word meet and yeah, cute. Anyhow, like I said, this is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. Both parties, both families do not want these two to love each other, and some strange things happen in this story that they do wind up loving each other. Of course, it's starting, and you just heard that it began with him killing her lover. So that's kind of a harsh start. But I love this book. You could hear how beautifully written it was, very poetic. And the character of R is someone that I fell in love with as a character. And there was a movie, as you saw on the cover, I mentioned that it came out a long time ago, but I love both the actors, and I love the actor who played M, and both the book and the movie I highly recommend for this Halloween season. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great week.